Incredible transformation. Girl saves two. Freezing dogs, but what happened next will shock you. Emma's breath fogged the air as she trudged home from the diner, the icy wind biting at her cheeks. Her shift had been brutal, crammed between the clatter of plates and the incessant chatter of customers. But it wasn't just the long hours that weighed her down. It was the gnawing specter of her family's financial burden. Visions of bills piled high filled her mind. Could she really afford any of her dreams in this suffocating reality? As she approached the road, something in the distance caught her eye. Two small, shivering puppies huddled together, their matted fur barely providing warmth against the harsh winter. She felt a tug in her heart. Their situation mirrored her desperate struggle. Emma paused, her pulse quickening as her mind raced. Should she help them, knowing that her family could barely keep their heads above water? But she couldn't just leave them to freeze, could she? With a resolve she didn't know she possessed, she scooped them up, her heart racing, both with love and fear of the implications they might bring. Emma's life shifted that night, yet alongside excitement was a weight she couldn't shake. The prospect of becoming a veterinarian felt dim. Always idealistic, she had imagined a life surrounded by healing animals, but now those dreams felt unattainable. Could she nurture two puppies while carrying the heaviness of her family's struggles? Doubt crept in, gnawing at her. What if she failed? The thought clawed at her mind, twisting her stomach into knots. Weeks passed, and in her pursuit to care for the pups, Emma met Mrs. Jenkins, the lonely old woman known for her dedication to fostering pets. With every visit, Emma felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, as Mrs. Jenkins imparted wisdom and skills that gave her purpose. An undeniable connection formed, built on shared laughter and fleeting moments of warmth amidst the unforgiving Michigan winter. Yet beneath the budding friendship lay a storm, a fear of losing the only person who believed in her potential. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. When Emma learned that Mrs. Jenkins faced eviction due to rising property taxes, the anchor of despair plunged her into a pit of anguish. How could the world be so cruel? This woman had opened her heart and home. Now, their future hung in the balance. Determined to fight for her friend, Emma embarked on a quest that put her at odds with her own insecurities. With each passing day, the pressure mounted as whispers of her efforts faded to a harsh reality. Community indifference, her own family's struggles, tensions coiling tighter with each new day. Standing in front of the small gathering at the fundraiser, Emma's heart thrummed. She scanned the crowd, their faces blurred into an ocean of uncertainty. Would her words inspire them? Would they understand the urgency of the situation? Suddenly, darkness enveloped the room. Flickering lights scattered their faces in confusion. Emma's stomach plummeted. This was more than a moment of desperation, it was a juncture of fate. What did it truly mean to save someone? As the shadows closed in, she realized her battle for Mrs. Jenkins was now a battle for herself, testing the very limits of her identity. A glimmer of understanding echoed within her, just as the resonance of her own truth lingered like a specter. What would she have to sacrifice in order to fight? And with that thought, she breathed in deeply, bracing herself for the storm ahead. The darkness seemed to stretch infinitely as Emma clutched the microphone, her only lifeline amid the uncertainty. She could feel the weight of every eye in the room upon her, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism reflected back. A wave of vulnerability washed over her. It threatened to pull her under. Yet beneath that anxiety simmered a fierce determination. She inhaled sharply, her mind a flurry of thoughts. This is not just about Mrs. Jenkins. It's about proving to myself that I can make a difference, she reminded herself. Even as doubt flickered in the back of her mind, she stepped further into the spotlight, her voice breaking through the enveloping silence. Mrs. Jenkins has dedicated her life to saving animals and providing a warm home for them, she began, aware that she must paint not just a story, but a vision in the minds of her listeners. Now she needs us. She needs help to keep her home. Fire ignited in her voice, her words tumbling out like a waterfall, gathering strength with every sentence. Emma recalled her own struggles, how often she had thought about giving up on her dreams. But standing there, she recognized that her path was not solitary. Mrs. Jenkins had once inspired her, and now it was time for her to inspire others. Imagine if we all came together to make a small sacrifice. We could save a home filled with love, hope, and so much compassion. As the words flowed, she could see subtle shifts in the crowd. Heads began to nod, eyes softened, and expressions changed. She was making an impact. With newfound clarity, Emma realized she was not merely advocating for Mrs. Jenkins. She was reclaiming her identity, the future she once had envisioned for herself as a healer. The fundraiser ended with applause, hesitant at first, then building into overwhelming support. Emma felt exhilarated, but as adrenaline faded, a wave of exhaustion washed over her. She had poured her heart into that speech, and it had taken more than she had anticipated. Still, the crowd's response had been a beacon of light in her tumultuous journey. She had sparked something within them, an ember of collective hope. In the days following, the donations rolled in, and Mrs. Jenkins was saved from eviction. But instead of the fulfillment she expected, a new apprehension settled deep in Emma's core. Had she truly done enough? The thought gnawed at her, unsettling her thoughts. Driven by a need for more, she sought out Mrs. Jenkins, wanting to learn everything. They tugged at the edges of possibilities together, from organizing pet adoption events to hosting community workshops on animal care. Emma discovered an innate talent for public speaking, driving initiatives that began to gain traction. The more she learned, the more her once fleeting dream of becoming a veterinarian refueled, growing roots in her heart. However, alongside this blossoming ambition, fear loomed. What if she was overstepping? What if she lost the one person who mattered to her in pursuit of her dreams? The stakes were rising, and with them, the personal battle grew fiercer. As she stared out the window at the snow falling gently again, a moment of stillness enveloped her while she traced the outline of the puppies playing with each other. They were thriving under her care, each wag of their tails a testament to resilience. But what lay ahead was still uncertain. Would she be brave enough to pursue her passion, wherever it might lead? Unbeknownst to her, a looming decision awaited, one that would challenge her to confront not just her fears, but the very fabric of her identity. As night fell, Emma closed her eyes, visions of an expansive future colliding with shadows of self-doubt. A reckoning was on the horizon, and she was about to step into the fray. Emma's nights blurred into dawns of contemplation. Days turned into weeks, and her life resonated with newfound energy. Yet the urgency of her indecision loomed larger with each passing moment. As the puppies found their footing under her watchful eye, their joy became a mirror reflecting her inner struggle. Here they were, embodying hope and resilience, and yet she felt tethered by fear. It was during one of these reflective moments when Mrs. Jenkins approached her with a contemplative gaze. Fear holds more power than we realize, doesn't it? Her voice broke through Emma's reverie. Emma turned, surprised at the unexpected depth of insight. I want this, but what if I lose you in the process? What if I drive you away with my ambitions? Mrs. Jenkins smiled knowingly. Emma, passion isn't meant to push people away. If anything, it should enrich our connections. Chasing your dreams doesn't have to compromise our bond. Struck by the simplicity of those words, Emma felt a ripple of clarity in her mind. She had been fighting against her dreams rather than allowing them to work alongside her relationships. That realization cracked something within her, a shift towards embracing both her aspirations and her mentors. Determined to explore this new perspective, Emma set herself a challenge. She began developing a strategy to combine her growing expertise in animal care with public speaking. She envisioned an initiative that not only honored Mrs. Jenkins's lifelong work, but also put her burgeoning skills to practical use. The idea of organizing a workshop for local schools, educating students on compassion towards animals and the responsibilities of pet ownership, ignited a fire of enthusiasm. That evening she wrote an outline, her handwriting fueled by excitement. Compassionate care. Understanding our furry friends. Each line bled into the next as her confidence bloomed. With each bullet point, Emma felt a sense of agency that she longed for, a feeling that echoed Mrs. Jenkins' steady encouragement. However, even amidst this surge of ambition, whispers of anxiety crawled back into her mind. The first hurdle, presenting her idea before a committee of educators, was approaching. She could already sense the judging eyes that would assess the worthiness of her initiative. What if they dismissed her? What if they compared her to seasoned professionals and found her lacking? The next few days fluctuated like a pendulum between exhilaration and doubt. Emma practiced obsessively, rehearsing her speech in front of the puppies, recounting paragraphs she had crafted with exhilaration. Her tone oscillated between hope and trembling uncertainty. Finally, the day arrived. As she stood on a modest stage, the audience's faces melded into one large looming wall of perceptiveness. Her heart raced, the stakes felt unbearably high, her vision trembled against the weight of fear. But as she launched into her presentation, recalling her connection with Mrs. Jenkins, her passion for animal care, and the hope for a harmonious future, she began to feel an unexpected calm. She saw nods and friendly smiles emerging from the sea of faces. Still, one figure in the back, an older man with a furrowed brow, watched closely, an expression of skepticism writ large. His narrowed gaze sent an electric pulse through her resolve. That critical stare became a formidable obstacle in her mind, challenging every ounce of confidence she had been building. Emma pressed on, voice steady, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that all her hopes hinged on the reaction of that one disapproving figure. Would she emerge from this trial with validation, or would it culminate in another crushing defeat? As she neared the conclusion, the room felt smaller, the air charged with an electric anticipation. Emma inhaled deeply, preparing for the final push. Behind her tight-lipped smile lurked the fear of rejection, contrasting vividly with her vision for the future. The moment of truth lingered, hanging tantalizingly in the air, and she could almost taste it as uncertainty loomed once more. Would she rise, transforming her dreams into a reality, or would this encounter seal her fate with self-doubt? One question haunted her as she stood before them, ready to entangle her courage with fate. What would happen next? Emma took a deep breath and moved into her concluding remarks, each word now infused with a sense of purpose. She shared a touching anecdote about a puppy she had nursed back to health, illustrating the profound bond that could form between humans and animals. The warmth in her voice seemed to slice through the remaining tension in the room. She could visualize each person's face, spinning their own stories about pets they loved or had lost, bonding over those shared experiences. But she sensed the stare from the back, its intensity unwavering. It anchored her resolve while simultaneously threatening to unravel it. Was she truly convincing them? What would she do if the committee remained unmoved? The voice inside her urged her to suppress her trepidation, to reflect on Mrs. Jenkins's faith in her and the mission that danced just beyond her reach. As she finished, the audience fell into a hushed silence, and a knot tightened in her stomach. Moments stretched like an elastic band ready to snap. The older man stood as the first to break the stillness, his measured tone slicing through her moment of uncertainty. While what you propose is admirable, it lacks the depth that established programs already incorporate, he declared, his gaze unyielding. Each word struck Emma, reverberating against her fragile confidence. The critical specter of doubt, which she had fought against, had manifested into this single confrontation. She could feel the piercing eyes of the others trained on her, awaiting her rebuttal. Each note of his critique whispered, "You're not good enough." Emma fought to steady herself. "I understand that there are successful programs already, but my perspective is rooted in youthful enthusiasm and a genuine connection with animals. That passion can inspire the next generation," she replied, her voice finding strength in its steadiness. That vulnerability itched to be met with an equally critical retort, but it was then she noticed several members around the room nodding in quiet agreement, their expressions reflecting a mixture of curiosity and contemplation. As the discussion unfolded, she felt her nervousness dissipate slowly but surely. Emma garnished her conclusions with counter-arguments, each point carefully articulated, drawing on her knowledge and backing it with a burgeoning belief in herself. The initial buzz of skepticism began to blend with intrigue. After a tense exchange, the committee agreed to give her project a trial run in a few schools. The older man laced his fingers, his brow furrowing. "We'll give your idea a chance, Emma, but only to see if you can back those idealistic thoughts with real impact." There was no warm-hearted concession in his voice, yet she took the victory as one step towards her goal. In the aftermath of the meeting, exhilaration surged through her, mingled with a residual strain of that earlier doubt. She had done more than she believed she was capable of. She had bared her vision to the world and had a foothold in the door cracking open towards her aspirations. Yet, as she packed her notes and prepared to leave, the skepticism of the older man hung in the air, a reminder that the journey was just beginning. Could she transform those initial begrudging steps into a full sprint toward her dreams? As she walked home, Emma reflected on how each personal victory was intertwined with the lingering specter of doubt. The seed of her new initiative was planted, but what would it take to nurture it into something that not only fulfilled her dreams, but also silenced her critics? The next morning she'd be meeting with Mrs. Jenkins again, and a fresh wave of uncertainty settled over Emma's heart. She needed clarity before her next big step. Would Mrs. Jenkins reinforce her newfound confidence, or would she serve as yet another reminder that self-doubt was an ever-looming shadow? Doubt and determination clashed within her mind, leading her to wonder. What pivotal insight awaited her on the path to self-discovery? Flashes of sunlight pierced through the window as Emma sat at the small cafe table, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. The soothing aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped her like a warm hug, but the comfort was fleeting. Today's meeting with Mrs. Jenkins loomed large in her mind, filled with uncertainty and anticipation. She had questions that reached deep into her core, ones that could potentially reshape her path. What if this encounter became another moment of validation or disillusionment? The uncertainty gnawed at her, forcing her to confront the growing awareness that being an advocate required more than passion. It demanded resilience, adaptability, and an ever-developing skill set. As she sipped her coffee, her thoughts turned toward the way she had presented her ideas to the committee. Did they see her as competent, or simply as an idealist? Was she prepared to face the reality that her greatest challenge might not come from those who dismissed her, but from mastering her own capabilities? Emma inhaled deeply, pulling from that small reservoir of courage. The waves of self-doubt still ebbed and flowed, but this time, instead of letting them overwhelm her, she acknowledged them as part of her evolution. Every advocate began as a novice, and she would keep pushing through until she developed the skills necessary to create a real impact. But how could she bridge the gap between her dreams and the practical demands set by her critics? After a fleeting moment of reflection, she mentally cataloged her plan for the meeting. Mrs. Jenkins had always been a guiding light, her wisdom a beacon in the darker moments Emma had encountered. Yet there remained the lingering fear that perhaps Mrs. Jenkins would not offer the straightforward encouragement she sought. When she finally spotted Mrs. Jenkins entering the cafe, Emma watched as the older woman approached with a warm smile, her presence instantly calming. Maybe today will be different, Emma thought. But her pulse quickened slightly. How to translate her newfound confidence into something tangible? The need to articulate her goals in a way that could navigate the skepticism surrounding her lingered, like a thin veil waiting to be lifted. "Hi, Emma," Mrs. Jenkins greeted, sitting down across from her. "How did your presentation go?" Emma nodded, a mixture of excitement and tension in her response. "It went all right. They agreed to give it a trial run, but I still feel like I need to prove myself more." Mrs. Jenkins leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with intrigue. "And what do you think you need to prove?" That question struck Emma like a minor chord in a symphony, unexpected yet profound. What indeed did she need to prove? Was it about the project or her own worthiness? She realized that accepting herself with all her flaws and potential might be the truest test she faced. I guess, Emma hesitated, then took a deep breath. I need to show them that my vision can lead to real change. Her voice gained strength. But I also have to become someone who can handle inertia and challenges. I want to grow beyond just having passion. I want competence. Mrs. Jenkins's smile deepened, and with a slow nod, she validated Emma's sentiment. Competence comes from experience, from embracing failure alongside success. Are you willing to face the realities of implementing your vision? Here was a moment of reckoning. Emma was struck by the clarity. Competence wasn't just about the right answers or flawless execution, it was also about embracing growth through adversity. Each challenge could be a stepping stone. That means, Mrs. Jenkins continued, her voice steady, not just running with your ideas but listening to feedback, adapting, and finding your strengths. Part of proving your worth is also knowing how to confront your weaknesses. The depths of her wisdom struck a chord. Emma realized that the opportunities ahead required a holistic approach to her development. Would she possess the courage to lean into discomfort and redefine herself in the process? Her heart raced with a sudden exhilaration mixed with trepidation. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty, yet shimmered with endless possibilities. With steely determination, she thought, what can I learn from this journey? That question lingered as they continued their conversation, each moment reinforcing Emma's burgeoning sense of purpose. Yet, in the back of her mind, the pressure mounted steadily. Would the challenges ahead validate her resolve, or would they expose her vulnerabilities? As they wrapped up their meeting, a new tension gripped her. Emma felt emboldened and frightened all at once. She needed a plan, not just for the trial run, but a strategy for immersing herself in her evolving role. What failures awaited her, and could they catalyze her growth rather than derail her journey? But one question hung shadowed in the air. How far could ambition carry her if she wasn't ready to confront the depths of her ability? The following days would demand more than efforts. They would summon an entirely new version of Emma. The transformation was only beginning, and the moment of reckoning awaited just beyond the horizon. Emma sat at her desk later that evening, a notepad filled with ideas sprawled before her. The trial run was merely days away, and the weight of that looming deadline pressed heavily on her shoulders. She peered at the notes, her mind racing through the feedback Mrs. Jenkins had so generously offered. Though empowered and motivated, Emma couldn't shake the familiar tight knot of anxiety that accompanied her commitment to mastery. Each suggestion had felt like a thread, colorful yet complex, weaving into the fabric of her nascent vision. Emma could hear Mrs. Jenkins's voice echoing in her mind. Listen to feedback, adapt, and find your strengths. She would have to do just that. But where should she start? Emma recognized that the clarity she sought would come only through trial and error. Taking a deep breath, she flipped to a fresh page in her notebook. It was time to establish both her goals and her tactical plan. Words flexibility, reflection, and responsibility jumped out at her. Emma understood that maintaining clarity during the inevitable bumps throughout this process would be paramount. Before the ink dried, a feeling of resolve surged through her. She needed practical steps, ways to embrace both success and potential failure. The intersection of growth and discomfort became her North Star. Refusing to let fear dictate her narrative, she began to conceptualize potential hurdles. Each identified challenge, the need for strong communication, for example, was an opportunity for her to grow. Emma made a bulleted list. 1. Feedback sessions. Schedule consistent opportunities with the team for discussing insights. 2. Shadowing experienced peers. Learn from their projects and decision-making processes. 3. Reflective journaling. Document lessons learned and emotional responses after each phase of implementation. 4. Growing a support network. Connect with fellow advocates who could provide moral and practical support. The act of transferring these thoughts onto paper became cathartic. Emma could literally see her vision taking shape, supported by the framework she was developing. But an unsettling thought surfaced. Was she truly ready to confront her weaknesses when criticism arose? The darkness of self-doubt crept back in. What if, despite her planning, she faltered during the trial run? Would that be a reflection of her incompetence, or a natural part of the growth process? Emma paused, just as she had done in the cafe that afternoon, wrestling with the duality of fear and ambition. Suddenly she was struck by a revelation. The very nature of growth hinged not on unwavering success, but on her ability to adapt after stumbling. Competence, as Mrs. Jenkins had framed it, was not a destination but an ongoing journey, a dance between triumphs and setbacks. She made a decisive choice. She would not shy away from mistakes. Instead, she would embrace them. With renewed conviction, Emma realized she could prepare for the unpredictability by actively cultivating resilience. The next day was filled with a simmering energy. Emma approached her colleagues with an open heart and a tenacious determination. She gathered them in a small circle, ready to present her initial plan and invite their suggestions. Your input is crucial. I want to grow this vision together, and I'm open to your thoughts, she stated, her voice steady with a newfound authority. As they began to share insights, she felt the familiar tide of self-questioning approach, but she fought against it. Each observation was a building block. Emma prompted herself to engage deeply, not just with her project, but with her evolving identity as an advocate. The collaborative spirit that flourished among them fueled her confidence. She realized that the more she allowed herself to be vulnerable, the more empowered she felt. Each interaction became a testament to her growth. A balance of personal introspection and professional development finally collided. And yet, as the team wrapped up their brainstorming session, Emma couldn't completely shake the anxious thought that pulsed in the back of her mind. Had she exposed her vulnerabilities enough to foster true collaboration, or had she simply laid bare her naivety? The tension from the unresolved question clung like a shadow as she walked out of the meeting room. The time for the trial run approached rapidly, and with it came the deep-seated fear that the real test would soon reveal more about her capabilities than she was prepared to face. In that moment of reflection, another query arose. Could authenticity in her journey ultimately be the secret to unlocking her full potential? And as she plunged into the day ahead, the weight of anticipation crystallized into something more profound, an essential blend of readiness and the expectation of the unknown. Emma sensed the next phase of her evolution was on the cusp of revealing itself, and that search for authenticity would be the defining trait of her growth. What challenges awaited her could not be known, but one thing was certain. She was no longer on this journey simply to advocate. She was on a mission to discover the depths of her own strength. The sun peeked through the blinds the next morning, casting stripes of light across Emma's desk, illuminating the remnants of her brainstorming session. She could feel the warmth of the day ahead nudging her into action. The anticipation was almost palpable. Questions swirled in her mind. Was today the day she would take a solid step toward becoming the advocate she envisioned? The first meeting for the trial run was hours away. Determined not to be consumed by nervousness, Emma downed a cup of coffee, contemplating her bulleted list. She was not just preparing a project, she was crafting her identity. And in that moment, it hit her. Every feedback session wouldn't merely be a chance to refine the project. It would also serve as a mirror reflecting her growth. The commitment to openness and vulnerability was, paradoxically, a pillar of strength. Arriving at the office, she made her way to the meeting room, where her colleagues gathered. Each friendly face brought a mix of encouragement and tension. As the meeting commenced, she felt the familiar pang of self-doubt, but it washed away as she focused on her intent. "Let's not just aim for polish today," she began, meeting their gazes with confidence. "Let's aim for honesty. I want your unfiltered feedback, your real thoughts, even if they feel critical. This is about collective improvement." As they chimed in with comments, ideas that flowed from their insights began to weave into her initial concepts. Yet, Every critique came with a twinge of apprehension. Each suggestion tugged at that oft-familiar knot in her stomach, the fear of inadequacy creeping into her thoughts. But Emma wisely turned her anxiety into fuel. She leaned into the discomfort. An excellent point about the messaging, she acknowledged as a colleague suggested refining the language to resonate more emotionally. How can we word this so that it feels authentic? I want it to reflect who we are as a team. As the discussion unfolded, Emma actively participated, jotting down notes and making adjustments in real time. Each word of feedback sharpened her focus. She could almost physically feel the transformation happening within her, not just of the project, but of her own understanding of what it meant to lead. But as the morning wore on, one colleague's critique left her momentarily rattled. Your vision is ambitious, Emma, but I wonder if you've considered potential backlash from the audience? Sometimes high expectations lead to disappointment. Has that thought crossed your mind? For a heartbeat she hesitated. That doubt clawed back and she battled against it. Was she risking too much? But through the anxiety, she realized it was this very tension that could guide her. You're absolutely right, she replied, taking a deep breath. Anticipating challenges must be part of my strategy. Let's brainstorm ways we can counteract any negative reception right now. Emma noted how this moment of honest criticism provided clarity rather than debilitating fear. By embracing this inquiry, she transformed a moment of vulnerability into an opportunity for critical dialogue. It was not a defeat, but rather part of the learning process. With a flicker of pride, she recognized that she was proving her commitment to growth was solidifying a network of mutual respect within her team. As lunch approached, the energy in the room felt electric, each person contributing not just to the project, but to Emma's burgeoning leadership style. They were invested, and in that investment, Emma felt an affirmation of her abilities. Stepping outside for a moment of fresh air and reflection, she grasped her coffee cup tightly. The sun now fully blazed overhead. It was both intimidating and invigorating. Questions lingered. Had she truly navigated her vulnerabilities, or merely scratched the surface? As the trial run loomed closer, the whisper of self-doubt flickered like a candle in her mind, yet it had dimmed in the wake of her constructive engagement with her team. But one question remained unanswered. Could her newfound resolve and clarity withstand the scrutiny of the real world beyond this supportive bubble? With that thought hanging over her, Emma returned to the meeting, where the real trials of her commitment awaited. Would her willingness to embrace authenticity hold true when faced with external pressure? The ticking clock reminded her of the time rapidly slipping away, heightening that sense of anticipation. Emma felt the weight of her journey ahead compress against her chest. Can embracing vulnerability lead her through the inevitable storm? With a deep breath, she opened the door, ready to confront whatever came next. The room was buzzing with a mix of excitement and anxiety as Emma stepped back inside. The faces around the table were a spectrum of anticipation and concern, mirroring her own inner turmoil. Her project was set for a public presentation, and while she had tasted success in private, the thought of extending that performance to a broader audience filled her with trepidation. Emma, we're all rooting for you, one colleague said, trying to inject enthusiasm into the moment. The warmth in their words wrapped around her like a comforting blanket, but beneath it lay the chill of uncertainty. Could she live up to their expectations? The hour approached, and her mind raced through countless scenarios. What if she stumbled over her words? What if the responses were critical instead of constructive? Yet these fears were distinctly different from the doubts that had clouded her earlier meetings. This time, there was a resolve crystallizing alongside the anxiety, an instinctive understanding that to advocate successfully, she had to embody her project's essence fully. Focus on the intention, she whispered to herself, breathing in deeply. She recalled the feedback she had requested earlier that day. It had been a test of her willingness to embrace uncertainty, and she had navigated it with passionate engagement. So why shouldn't she step into this next phase with the same disposition? She silently formulated her plan of action, concentrating on her core message and adapting it as she absorbed the feedback she had collected. Once in front of her audience, she began with a confident introduction, aligning her passion for the project with the vision she wished to convey. Emma's voice resonated with conviction. She laid out her aspirations and the purpose behind the ideas she sought to share. Each phrase was measured but genuine, reflecting the hard work she had poured into the initiative. However, she was not unmoored from anxiety. As she approached the critical sections about potential challenges, she felt her pulse quicken. The earlier critique lurked at the back of her mind, challenging her to address concerns before they crystallized into objections. "We anticipate skepticism," she stated plainly, a deliberate shift in her tone that caught some listeners off guard. "Let's not shy away from discussing it. I want this concept to resonate, but it must also withstand criticism." This willingness to expose the soft underbelly of her vision paid off. Attendees leaned forward, intrigued. Perhaps they sensed that beneath the surface of her idealism lay a recognition of reality. As the dialogue swelled, she found herself engaged in a back and forth that felt vibrant and collaborative. Colin, one of her colleagues, probed her plans on how to create emotional resonance and asked, "But what is your fallback plan if it doesn't go as envisioned?" Emma paused, deliberating. This was an uncharted territory, the moment where her insecurities could surface, but she knew she needed to harness this vulnerability for authenticity's sake. "Honestly, I see this as a learning journey. My expectation is to gain insights from both successes and missteps. If something doesn't resonate, it will only drive my desire to understand why." Their reactions shifted. Appearances of skepticism faded, replaced by nods of understanding. Emma had taken a concept fraught with uncertainty and turned it into a collaborative exploration. As the conversation deepened, her confidence amplified, bolstered by an emerging belief in her capability to adapt and refine. Nevertheless, as Emma fielded questions and offered thoughtful responses, the gnawing fear of external scrutiny lingered. It reminded her of the weight of her aspirations, bringing an awareness that while she had entered this meeting with a clearer sense of purpose, the path forward would not be devoid of challenges. Then, as the presentation wound down, a comment from a veteran member of the team sparked her attention. "Emma, you've fostered an honest dialogue today which is both transformative and vulnerable. But have you considered how you'll respond when that honesty leads to criticism from our audience?" That question struck her like lightning, a stark reminder that her journey would demand more than just courage in this supportive environment. The stakes were climbing, and while she felt equipped, uncertainty loomed. Standing on the precipice of her transformation, Emma locked eyes with the attendee who had questioned her earlier. This wasn't merely about defending her aspirations, it was about embracing every conflict and cultivating resilience against pessimism. With a flicker of determination igniting within her, she realized this was only the beginning of the battle. She could feel the moment of truth drawing closer, and her heart raced with the weight of what she must confront next. Would she be able to maintain her transparent resolve when faced with the broader challenges on the horizon? The answer awaited just beyond the door, in the backlash she had yet to encounter. Emma lingered in the aftermath of her presentation, the thrill of engagement still pulsing through her. Yet the impending doubt crashed through like a tide. The conversation had ignited sparks of encouragement, but now shadows loomed, whispering insidiously in her mind. How would those who had fervently reacted in the moment interpret her ideas once they left the confines of the room? Over the next few days, Emma found herself spiraling down a rabbit hole of scenarios. Moments of unexpected critique from colleagues haunted her thoughts. She replayed Colin's question incessantly. What if the honesty she nurtured turned into an invitation for harsh scrutiny? She needed to confront this looming dread head-on. With her pulse racing, Emma decided to initiate a follow-up conversation with her team. She requested individual feedback, hoping to glean insights that would arm her for what lay ahead. This choice echoed her earlier resolution. Only by confronting unpleasant truths could she nurture resilience. Each meeting became a battleground of thoughts as she parsed through reactions, striving to understand perspectives she had previously overlooked. "I appreciate your vision, Emma," one colleague mentioned, "but you need to be prepared for the pushback. Stakeholders often focus solely on profits, not ideals. That comment stung. Her stomach knotted, but she had asked for feedback. How could she expect to defend her project if she didn't anticipate the source of opposition? Embracing this discomfort became crucial, not for the validation of her project, but for the growth she longed to achieve. Emma spent late nights drafting responses to potential questions she feared most. Would her vision effectively mesh with the realities her audience would demand? These preparations ignited a tenacity she had not recognized within herself. While sleep-deprived, she found solace in focusing on her next steps, rather than the dread that had once felt paralyzing. In a moment of inspired clarity, she began brainstorming how to weave stakeholder concerns into her presentation for a more balanced narrative. She experimented with data that would highlight both her idealistic goals and commercially viable strategies, illustrating that her vision could harmonize with practical outcomes. Days turned into series of drafts and revisions, her confidence building with each new iteration. But just as momentum surged, the ultimate test arrived unexpectedly. A critical meeting was scheduled with a senior executive known for his brash demeanor. Emma felt her hands clammy as she prepped. He was notorious for dissecting presentations with surgical precision, exposing any weaknesses mercilessly. She steeled herself, reminding herself that resilience was born from exposure to discomfort. As she entered his office, the air thick with palpable tension, Emma clutched her notes tightly. The executive barely glanced up, gesturing for her to begin. The moment felt surreal. The polished graphs on her screen seemed to taunt her with the weight of their implications. With a steadying breath, she launched into her presentation. Yet as she reached the pivotal section addressing risks, he interjected sharply, "So, what you're saying is that you are willing to gamble on a flawed concept." Heat flooded her face. The words hung in the air like heavy stones. Emma felt a rush of defensive instinct, wanting to clarify, to either retreat into a safe response or rise to the challenge. But then, just as she had trained herself, she remembered her focus. This was the moment to embrace authenticity. "Failing to act on our idealism feels far more like a gamble to me," she replied, eyes locking onto his. "This project holds potential, not just for us, but for the community, if we can align our vision with achievable goals." The resolve in her voice startled even herself, but the reaction was suspended in time, leaving an echo that demanded acknowledgement. The silence stretched, and she could feel his scrutiny intensifying. Her heart raced, anticipating the judgment. Would her courage reinforce her position, or would it be met with skepticism? Tension gripped her as she awaited his verdict. The moment hung delicately in the balance, a turning point forming before her. But just as she felt a flicker of triumphant resolve, a new thought intruded. A sense of impending backlash soon to follow. What if her attempt backfired, leading to professional isolation rather than validation? The room felt small as she waited for the storm to break. Could she really navigate the narrow path between ambition and acceptance? Emma steeled herself, realizing that whatever transpired next would forge her into the professional she was determined to become. With the executive's penetrating gaze still scrutinizing her, Emma refused to falter. She locked eyes with him, channeling her mounting anxiety into a focal point of determination. She had spent countless hours discussing her vision, fielding her peers' insights, and preparing for moments just like this. This wasn't just about convincing him. It was about asserting her right to her aspiration. "Every significant change requires a leap of faith," she asserted unabashedly. "To succeed, we have to learn to adapt and grow. This project isn't just theoretical. It's a pathway to real, tangible change in our community. We cannot dismiss that potential lightly." As she spoke, the weight of her commitment and passion filled the room. It was a stark contrast to the uncertainty and trepidation that had previously plagued her thoughts. In that moment, she realized that she was no longer simply seeking approval, she was advocating for her beliefs. The executive leaned back, brow furrowed. For a brief moment, it felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. Silence hung, pregnant with possibilities. Emma's palms were slick with sweat, but now it felt different. They were symbols of her determination, no longer mere vessels of her anxiety. She swallowed hard but held her ground. I believe we can establish a program that creates awareness while also being sustainable professionally, she continued, heart racing yet steady in tone. Our approach must find a balance between idealism and pragmatism. People will respond to authenticity. They want to engage with something real, something that resonates with their own values. If we can establish that connection, we stand to not only meet corporate objectives, but also uplift our community. As she finished, a subtle shift occurred. The executive's demeanor began to soften, his critical gaze momentarily faltering. She could sense curiosity blossoming beneath his earlier skepticism. Emma maintained her composure, ready for whatever response would follow. Finally, he spoke, his voice clipped but less accusatory. You make a compelling argument, Emma. The vision itself may hold merit, but the numbers must correlate with achievable impact. If we cannot see a quantifiable outcome, there's no justification. Emma took a breath, encouraged to press on. I have generated preliminary data showing potential community engagement metrics and their projected ROI. If you give me a chance, I'd like to walk you through those figures. I believe they can effectively demonstrate the feasibility of our proposals. She displayed a confidence that surprised even herself. Her earlier fear about vulnerability transformed into a fortifying strength. Each critique became an opportunity for deeper connection and understanding. All right, let's see what you've got, he replied, gesturing to the screen. But you'll need to deliver, he cautioned, looking pointedly at her. As she shared her calculations and analysis, Emma felt the rhythm of her earlier nerves dissipate. She articulated her reasoning clearly, and questions morphed into a constructive dialogue rather than an interrogation. Each exchange drew her closer to embodying the professional she sought to become, resilient, assertive, and above all else, authentic. By the time the meeting concluded, a palpable shift had occurred. The senior executive nodded with respect, and Emma felt a surge of exhilaration. She had not only defended her vision, she had also fortified her sense of self-worth. Let's move forward with a preliminary phase, he affirmed sharply. But I expect regular updates and evidence of engagement. This project has potential, but only if you remain proactive in your approach. Emma walked out of that office with her heart racing, not from fear, but exhilaration. She grasped the significance of what she had just accomplished. No longer shadowed by self-doubt, she had embraced the reality of her potential. In the following months, Emma devoted herself to the project with unwavering resolve. She met with various stakeholders, engaged community members, and continuously refined her strategy based on feedback and experiences. Growth surged through every aspect of her advocacy, and it flourished not just in herself, but also in her relationships with others. Recognizing that each challenge was merely an avenue for improvement, she stood firm in that belief. Success didn't eliminate setbacks, it magnified learning opportunities. Her vision for community engagement gained traction, impact metrics soared, volunteers rallied around her, and the excitement around her workshops flourished. At the end of the year, Emma received commendation not just for her initiative, but also for her adaptability and leadership. The program stood as a testament to her journey. The banners showcasing the partnership between her organization and the community echoed the theme of resilience she'd adopted. As she accepted the award for her success, she felt a tide of gratitude wash over her. Emma recognized that the real transformation was not merely the recognition she had received, but the sophisticated understanding she now held about her own capabilities. Emma stood in that moment, feeling an unparalleled sense of fulfillment and solid confidence, a culmination of her development. She had not only proven herself in the face of criticism, but had emerged stronger within herself, solidified in her vision, achieving a remarkable personal milestone while navigating authentic relationships and responsibilities. Emma now understood that true success is a multifaceted journey, embracing growth that spiraled from vulnerability into empowerment. And in that bright spotlight, she acknowledged her journey, both as an advocate and as an individual who now wholeheartedly understood her strength. You need to subscribe now to our channel to catch exclusive emotional testimonies of personal transformations like Emma's. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more inspiring stories. Comment below your reactions and theories about Emma's incredible journey. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to experience this transformative conclusion.